The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of KSMQ Public Service Media Incorporated or its assigns.
We're going hog wild on this episode of Farm Connections. I'll visit with Mary Bartz, a culinary consultant for the Minnesota Pork Board. She'll show me how to make some interesting and mouth-watering meals with grilled pork loin. Also, we'll check out the National Barrow Show in Austin, Minnesota. Stay tuned for Farm Connections.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections on KSMQ, sponsored in part by the Cedars of Austin, a senior living community. We even have a retired farmers club. Independent, assisted, and memory care apartments. Learn more at cedarsofaustin.com. Will Mahler, the ag attorney, has been representing dairy farms in Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin for 37 years. Will Mahler, the ag attorney's office is in Rochester, and Will is a proud partner of Farm Connections. Thanks, Will Mahler.
Welcome to Farm Connections. On almost every episode, we deal with farm products, food, feed, fuel, and fiber. This episode, we're going to take it to the next step where we actually take a food product, select it, customize it, and prepare it. And to help me show you how to do that is Mary Bartz. Mary Bartz, welcome to my porch.
It's great to be here, Dan. You've been very generous with us today. Thank you.
Well, it's really a treat. I know you're great in the baking of things, and now I want to see how you prepare pork. And you've got a lot of great tips on how families and individuals can use the pork product and make it a valuable addition to their menu. So tell me a little bit about your background. What qualifies you to cook in my porch?
Because you invited me, number one. But I've been very blessed with a wonderful agricultural background, growing up on a farm, marrying into a farming family, and a great education in food science and nutrition, and the opportunity to work for a major consumer foods product company in Minnesota, and also for several commodity organizations.
Well, in one of those companies, didn't you spend some time in the kitchen developing products?
I did. Not only did we develop new consumer food products, we developed recipes, we worked on the photography of those products, and worked on the media and promoting those products as well.
You know, every one of those aspects employs somebody.
That's right.
And it's all agricultural type jobs. And I think our audience overlooks some of those things, but you're yet another person that proves there's a lot of careers in agriculture.
Very true.
Tell us about the whole boneless pork loin.
Well, that is our featured pork cut today. And it's one of my favorite cuts because it's so versatile. The whole boneless pork loin is indeed the whole loin. And I have it here on display because this is how you'd see it in the meat case with the plastic overwrap. And you might think that, oh my gosh, that's an awful lot of meat. Typically a whole boneless loin is between 6 to 10, 11 pounds or so. But what I love to do, what we want to talk about today, is that customization. Cutting what you need, say, for a pork roast recipe, for pork chops, for kebab cubes or stir-fry strips. Prepare what you want tonight for dinner and then freeze the rest. And so with a little planning ahead, you have great options ready to cook, and this whole boneless pork loin is probably one of the best values in the meat case, in that sea of red. Incredible value. It's boneless, it's very well trimmed, and you really get a real bang for your buck with this particular pork cut.
Well, earlier you talked about loin being synonymous with lean. What did you mean?
Loin is lean. Every time you look at a pork cut in the meat case, now it could be the pork loin, it could be the tender loin, or the sirloin. That loin really equals that lean definition by the USDA. So it means that it's really a very healthful, nutritious cut with minimal fat, meeting that government definition.
Well, I want to learn more, and I want to see how you cook a loin.
Let's go.
Mary, you picked out a great product. When you went to the meat case, what were you looking for?
Well, Dan, it's not that difficult. The meat industry does a great job of having them all packaged, all labeled, ready to use. So I really was looking more for size today than anything. This ended up being about, the whole loin was about 8 3/4 pounds. I knew I wanted a 4-pound roast. I wanted at least 4 pork chops and some nice kebab cubes as well. So I was just eyeballing it, to be honest with you, today.
Well, you're good at it, and I'm sure that you always pick out a good product. But if when you're at the store or the retailer, you have questions, what do you do then?
Well, if you really are stumped in this whole sea of red, you can ask your friendly Meat Case employee, and if not, you could just get out your smartphone and do a little Googling, and there's some great resources out there to help you as well.
Google pork, Google menus, what do you Google?
Pork would be great. I would suggest porkbeinspired.com. Great information on pork cuts, applications with recipes, good nutrition information as well.
Awesome. Well, you got us to this stage where we've got it cut and ready. What's next?
Well, we're going to put on the pepper seasoning rub. Now, this is really an easy rub. All I had to do was go to the store and pick out pepper seasoning. So, seasoned pepper, many brands, many different permutations out there. You could even make your own rub from dried seasonings and dried herbs. But for peppered pork rub, it's going to be just a matter of sprinkling it on. And I like to be really generous. And actually, when you talk about rubs, a lot of people just really get right in there and do start massaging, the meat. That's acceptable. I don't know if you have the inclination to do that today.
Absolutely. Show me how.
Well, it's really kind of, you want to get it in, and then, now that we've got our hands dirty, I'm going to turn it over to the other side too. You feel that?
Hey, that's neat.
And you really can press it in. So, you avoid, particularly on the grill, we're going to be doing some movement here, and we'll do a little pressing. This really is a 2-person job.
Finally, I'm useful for something. This actually is fun, and when you're talking about seasonings and rubbing salts and seasons, I have a lot of friends that experiment with things. If they like a certain flavor, they put it on their pork and they try it.
Well, that's the beauty of pork. It really has, a very, very nice natural flavor, but it really accepts the additional flavors, very well, too. So.
Do I have to do the face?
I do, just because whoever gets that end cut, and if they like the seasoning, it'll be that nice little crustiness. It's sort of like the heels of the bread. It's sort of like the
Oh, I can hardly wait.
crust of the roast. So there we go. So now, as we get ready to put the roast on the grill, we've got our tongs and we've got our spatula. Now the one thing, you have a lovely gas grill, and we want to make sure with a whole roast that we're cooking over indirect heat. So that means, let's just shift over here, that we have the burners going on, I believe, the left and the middle, and the burner is off on the right-hand side. We have a drip pan underneath. You have automatic drip pans, which are very nice. I don't have to worry about cleaning them today. You'll have to do that.
My job.
That is. But because this is more of an oven effect, about 15 to 20 minutes per pound is the standard cooking time for roast, on the grill or in the oven. So all we're going to do.
Would you like me to bring that over?
Would you do that? That'd be great.
I would be happy to.
This is, like I said, a 2-person job. Okay, you can. Now, what we do have, what is really key, is a medium heat setting. Indirect heat, a medium heat setting. And so we have our dials at medium. And medium typically would end up being about 400 degrees on gas. So, we get impatient. We just are really anxious. Sometimes we turn up the heat. And we really want to emphasize medium heat for all types of grilling, either direct or indirect. Now, if you have a charcoal grill, however, what you want to do with that is once your coals are ash covered and glowing and they're spread out, hold your hand at cooking height, so that'd be the height of the grill grate. And if you can hold your hand in that position for 4 seconds, that's medium heat. That means your coals are ready, the pork chops or the kebab cubes can go directly on the grill surface. So medium heat, if we're on charcoal, you want to move your coals over to one side, put the drip pan underneath, and so this particular pork roast would go over the drip pan. So again, it's that indirect heat creating that, oven circulation and resulting in tender, juicy pork every time.
And about 15 to 20 minutes per
Per
pound.
pound. So we have a 4-pound roast, so we can go take a break now.
Well, and I've noticed that you're using different colored tools. Is there some significance to that?
Yes. Well, I have a set for the red indicates raw, and green indicates cooked. So sometimes you got to really stop and think about this. But red equals raw is pretty easy to remember. So it's just good food safety. We want to avoid cross contamination between raw food and cooked food.
Mary, how do I know to stop using the tools you selected for raw meat versus cooked meat?
That is a really good question. What my rule of thumb is, once I make the turn from the raw side, back onto the cooking grate, that's when I know all sides are being seared, and that's when I revert to the green tool. So I go green for the rest of the cooking time.
Fantastic, thank you. While that's cooking, let's take a look at the National Barrow Show, a great way to learn about the pork industry and its significance in the upper Midwest.
My name is Joel Nelson. I'm the chairman of the local committee for the National Barrow Show here at the 67th annual event here at the Mower County Fairgrounds in Austin, Minnesota. You go to the county fair and you can see chickens and rabbits and dairy and beef and all the different goats and lambs. This is a specialty thing, and it's these are show swine. These are show animals, and they're expensive animals. I guess I say the auction is almost the most fun, because you see an animal get out there and get sold for $25,000, $30,000 or upwards. It's pretty interesting to watch that process. At that point, it's big business. Oh, you'll see some that are $3,000, $4,000, and they're telling me, from what I've heard just in conversations with the individuals here that come in from around the country, that the fairs and the other shows have been going kind of high. So we're looking at maybe it'll be a little higher this year. Well, the purpose is to show off the 8 purebred breeds of swine, and it's grown to be quite a large show. People come from all over the upper Midwest, clear out as far as Ohio, out in Nebraska, down as far as Missouri, and some animals even out of Texas. So the scope of the show has grown, and it's all about trying to improve the quality of the meat in the pork industry.
I think this will be my 40th year here. Started when I was in 3rd grade, and my mom and dad grew up with the purebred hams. So I got started there, and then it kind of gets in your blood. Over the last couple days, they had a junior show that came with the kids would have to show a purebred, a ham, York, Chester, Berkshire, Spot, and then they could be able to show a crossbred barrel. So that was done came in on Saturday, and then they were judged yesterday and Sunday, and then today they were doing breeding stock. So they're judging all the different breeds in 2 rings.
I think that would be a real asset. Another type of deal when we talk
I think that they do a really good job. I hope the National Barrow Show stays here for a long time, and my kids have shown here too. I have daughter Tony and Sydney and my wife Mary, and we've been here, and they really enjoy it.
It's just an interesting show to come and see and learn a little bit more about the swine industry.
Welcome back, and joining me on my porch is Mary Bartz, a culinary consultant, who's done a wonderful job of showing how to select a pork product, prepare it, and then grill it. And I want to see what's underneath that tinfoil.
Well, let's take a look. Now, this is that 4-pound pork loin. We've been letting it rest, about 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes or so. We just want to remind you that we did take it to 145 internal temperature. That is now the USDA approved internal temperature for whole muscle pork cuts. So keep in mind any of those old 160 recipes. I mean, if you prefer medium doneness, that's fine. You could keep it there, but 145 is medium rare, pink, tender, juicy pork every time.
Well, it looks beautiful, it smells wonderful, and I want to taste it.
Well, let's move it to the cutting board. Ready to go. And one thing, it may be obvious about the whole pork loin, you know, this is a beautiful roast. Cooked, I think, about 15 to 20 minutes per pound was what we were aiming for. And as I slice crosswise, you know, against the grain,
Perfect.
have a little bit of pink. Maybe we stood a little bit longer than 15 minutes or so, Dan.
Well,
but
we've been busy.
we have been busy, but I want you to have just a quick little sample. We're just going to cut off a little edge here for you. And tell me what you think about our peppered pork roast.
Delicious. Very, very good.
Very nice.
It's moist,
Tender, juicy, delicious. So-
flavorful. It's great.
Well, let's get this plated so we can have a bountiful, beautiful, and nutritious peppered pork roast. We've just plated our 4-pound grilled pork loin along with grilled, fresh, garden-grown corn on the cob and hand-picked green beans, also done on the grill with a little oregano garnish. And then with the leftover pork, or what I like to call the planned-over pork, we've cubed the pork and added it to a bit of greens. We have chopped mango, red onion, and a very lovely light raspberry vinaigrette dressing.
Mary, this is exciting because pork chops is one of the most delightful meals that I've ever had.
Well, you're going to love this recipe. It is one of the most easiest recipes you'll ever make. We have our 4 boneless loin chops that we cut earlier from the whole loin. And let's get going with the pesto rub here. We have 2 cloves of garlic. I just need to chop that to a fairly fine state. And then we'll add 1 cup of fresh basil, direct from the garden, I might add. And if this happens to be a time of the year when you don't have basil in the garden, basil is readily available at grocery stores. Let somebody else do the growing and the nurturing. And we have a fairly even cut size there. I think we have. There we go. We had 1 loose leaf that was giving us a little bit of a challenge. Now, I'm going to keep this going, and then we have 2 tablespoons of fresh squeezed lemon juice, and this is from 1/2 of a whole lemon. And then I'm going to be brave and pour the 2 tablespoons of olive oil right from the bottle into the, maybe a little bit more. And then we need a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And I like fresh ground pepper. In addition to the pepper, we're adding salt. I like kosher salt, which is a coarse salt. And we're getting to about the right consistency for the basil. Take a look at that, Dan.
Yummy.
And more importantly,
It's good.
just smell that. Isn't that just
Awesome.
amazing? And this is what we call a wet rub. And we're really just going to spread it on the chops. Get out a basting brush, or you could do it with a spatula, either way. And so just evenly coat both sides of the chops. And once you have it coated, just refrigerate the chops maybe for 15-30 minutes. It doesn't need a long marinade time at all. Just enough time to get the grill up to that medium temperature. Your gas grill is doing a good job of holding its temp about 400 degrees for medium. And with the pork chops, this will be direct heat grilling, directly over the heat source. And since we've got our raw chops, we're going to turn them over.
Mary, you talked about indirect and direct. How do you know which cut to use with each?
That's a really good question, Dan. With the thinner cuts, such as the chops or kebab cubes, because they are fairly thin, anywhere between a 1/2 inch to say 1.5 inches, I would do direct heat, meaning it's directly over the heat source. Now with those larger cuts, such as a roast, and we had that 4-pound roast, that really requires indirect because you need to allow the interior of the roast to get done and not have the outside overcook before the inside is at a proper temperature. So it just sort of helps balance everything out. So medium heat setting. Now if you have charcoal, remember you need to hold your hand at cooking height over those glowing ash-covered coals, and 4 seconds is medium heat. If you can keep your hand in that position for 4 seconds, it's medium heat. And let me tell you, I've burned the palm of my hands more than once, so just have to be a little patient. Okay, so we're going to go right to the grill, and we have everything, I believe, on, so we're going to, didn't do a very good job on this one, did I?
Would you like me to hold that?
Why don't you place the chops on the grill? I'll hold
I
it.
get to do something
Yeah.
good. I feel good about that.
Now, probably for 3/4 inch chops, about 4 to 5 minutes per side is the proper doneness. Now, again, you have to be patient. Don't be tempted to start turning the chops because you need to sear. You need to make sure that you really get that, that browning and avoid that sticking when you want to go under there with a spatula. So just chill a little, just be a little patient, and I wouldn't start looking at these until about 4 minutes or so.
4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Mary, I'm really getting hungry. How are the pork chops?
Well, I think we're about there, Dan. Let's take a quick look.
Well, they look good, but how do I know for sure they're done?
Well, the only reliable way to gauge internal doneness of pork is with an instant read meat thermometer. And my approach is insert the thermometer horizontally from the side. So you want it in the middle, all the way through. And we are at 144.9. I'm going to call that 145. Okay. So do you want to bring the platter over?
Absolutely.
So we're going to do that. I get a little anal. I really like checking all of the chops. Oh, that one's looking good.
So you're very thorough. I like that.
Well, the grills, particularly when you're outdoors, there are hot spots, the weather conditions, so we just want to make sure that we're good to go. I think we've nailed this one. So 145 with a 3-minute rest for medium rare chops. And just add a little bit of foil, and we'll let those rest for a few minutes, and
Beautiful.
we'll be ready to eat. Our tender, juicy, and delicious pork chops have been resting for about 3 minutes. And tonight we're serving them on a platter with grilled white potatoes. Actually, I should say they're red potatoes. They're red skin potatoes that we just sectioned and put on the grill for about 10 minutes. And then we also have sweet potatoes, also done on the grill. Just toss with a little olive oil and keep them moving. And just want to grill until tender. We'll add a little basil garnish just to reinforce the delicious basil garlic rub. And we are ready to serve. Now with the cook once, eat twice approach, any leftover garlic basil chops we're going to slice and top a new salad for next day dining, Tuscan pork and bean salad. So we have our salad greens. We're going to add chopped fresh red tomatoes, again, right from the garden. We have canned cannellini beans, and cannellini is a white kidney bean. Now make sure you rinse the beans well and drain them. You know, beans are a great source of fiber. We're adding artichoke hearts, again canned, so rinse them, slice them in half. But a wonderful Italian theme going. And then we have red pepper strips to add more color, more flavor, more crunch. 1 chopped green onion, and actually I sliced this green onion. And then we have to add our pork strips, our basil garlic pork strips. And then just for the final flourish, we have some Parmesan cheese, fresh grated Parmesan. And then serve with your favorite bottled Italian salad dressing.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Farm Connections. And Mary, it was great to have you show us how to use pork and make wonderful meals. And just to conclude the show, let's skewer some kebabs.
It sounds great.
Show us how.